This alliance is actually happening, chat. What is this? What a surprise for a Friday night. World versus World, World Restructuring, Beta, Feedback, and Future. We recently completed a World Restructuring Beta event, which ran from January 12th to February 2nd. So let's talk about it. We're pretty happy with the results and data gathering provided by this beta, uncovering some startup data errors, increased queue issues, and some beta-specific reset and UI errors. In addition, we gathered great feedback from community members about their experiences and have some good areas for improvement identified. We've already set to work on those fixes and improvements, so let's get into some of the details. The issues. Team placements. Where am I and who are all these people? We uncovered several individually small issues that compounded upon one another and led to incorrect team placements. Yeah, like in fact, in every single beta, this happened. First, during the EU reset at the start of the beta, we discovered that our servers had failed to read the new team creation data and fell back to its last known good data, the teams from the last beta. We identified the issue pretty much. Wait, what's going on here? Oh, okay. I left it. We identified the issue pretty much immediately and then restarted the matchup with the correct data. Unfortunately, some players were presented with the option to select their team when the wrong data was active, and that choice prevented them from being fixed in that reset. But ultimately, the engineers came up with a clever solution that allowed us to identify the affected players and fix them programmatically, but we couldn't get it done until early evening Pacific time, so most of the players had already logged off for the night. After resolving that, we could dig into the still unknown reports. We identified a trend of people who told us they selected their guild close to the lockout deadline and started exploring that thread, revealing our second major issue. The analytics that tracked guild selection had an error and stopped reporting during the night before the lockout, so it effectively prevented any selection from making it to the server for an extra day. This was an easy fix once it was spotted, and now we've got some safeguards in place to spot the issue if it was to occur again. That actually is probably why a lot of the issues later happened. The fact that, like, yeah, some people last minute, a day before, were trying to enter, and turns out it didn't even count anyway. The rest of the issues in this category occurred very rarely, and some are still being investigated, but we also caught a few of places where the system was working as expected but felt broken. The first, in this case, is an inactive World vs. World guild. Our system has a method for removing guilds and players from the team creation data if they don't participate in World vs. World for an extended period. Normally, this won't affect you if you have a World vs. World guild selected, as it is very likely someone else that selected that guild has played WVW recently. If no one with the guild selected has played recently, everyone in it gets sorted as a solo player. We're looking into solutions for this. This basically is, if you didn't select the World vs. World guild, you'll be randomly put in with some people in a random server. So you're like the pug in the server creation. The other case, the other edge case, we saw affected players who had transferred worlds to a different region. If you normally play in North America but had transferred to EU during the lockout, you'd be sorted into a team on EU. It then transferred back to NA, you wouldn't have been kept with your WVW guild. The combination of all these issues meant a lot of players were not kept with their guilds as expected, especially in the first team creation. Huge shout out to Ruby, Roy, and amazing members of our customer service team who spent a lot of time getting players manually moved to the right teams to minimize the impact of these issues. Wow, amazing. A lot of late nights. This is the first beta for which we had a proper solution for manually changing teams, and we certainly put it through some rigorous live testing. So, what's next? The queues. The queue issue or map is full error struck again during this beta, even though it wasn't full. With the increased population due to the very popular World vs. World Rush and the World Restructuring beta, we saw occurrences and reports of these issues skyrocket. While this is a known quantity and ongoing investigation in WVW, we did find some new variation of this issue that are specific to the World Restructuring system. The team is exploring why that might be and seeing if it can inform the larger queue issue investigation as well. UI. What you see is sometimes what you get. Beta resets have had some odd UI errors, and while we solved many of them, there were a couple that still affected us this time around. Notable reset errors were team names could be incorrect on the WVW Mist War panel. Yeah, that's happened. Yeah, like you'd be on the wrong team, but you're actually on a different name altogether. Players could be unable to join WVW via the UI or portals. Yeah, this was like a weird error. But if you logged out of the game and came back in, sometimes it sort of fixed it. Thankfully, these have a simple workaround and are fixable by relogging. Yeah, exactly. But they still led to reset frustration for a lot of players. We also discovered an issue in which players that had set them to invisible status would not see the proper UI for the WW guilds, while this issue was visual only and server was still getting the proper data. It has likely caused people to be placed in team creation due to the confusion. Yeah, so for example, if you're appear offline in your status, you can't actually read the guild chat because you're technically not online. And so I assume that is linked with something to the guild system, which allows, which probably created all these errors. Luckily, all these errors have somewhat similar root causes, and we have fixes prepared for them. Now, the feedback. There we go. Where is the solution? Despite the issues, the beta was very successful in many ways, giving us tons of data and great player feedback. Thank you all for sharing your experiences with us to help us improve the world restructuring system. I want to quickly address some of the major feedback topics. Some matchups and time zones felt unbalanced, unorganized. And this was a mixed experience. There has been a lot of discussion about the balance of specific matchups, time zone coverage, and distribution of experienced commanders, especially open tags. I'm very glad that we received so much feedback in this area, as it was primary goal of this beta. A new team creation algorithm was utilized for the first time, and the new criteria are working as expected. So the goal of this is to create the most engaging matchups possible, ensuring there's a good balance of player and commander activity throughout the matchups across time zones. We certainly have improvements to make with how our criteria are used to create balanced teams, but initial data and feedback shows us moving in a good direction. This is like probably the hardest thing to balance because you always have dead time zones compared to other ones. So I'd hope that, you know, it's more, if the more players play the game mode, more likely it is to hopefully balance out. And, you know, obviously this is also taken into account players will play in different time zones. But yeah, it's good that they're trying as much as they can. That's still been the whole point of this world restructuring, is to balance time zones. That's what it came down to. Language barriers. Many players in our EU community experienced issues communicating with their teammates due to the heavy mixing of international guilds and players. With communication being so critical to a good WW experience, this is a major area of improvement for us. This is challenging to solve without breaking down the balance aspects of the team creation algorithm. We don't have a timeline or solution nailed down for this yet, but we are finding ways to mitigate the issue. Loss of server communities. Several players have expressed a feeling of loss of community with the world restructuring system. While we understand that this departure from the long-standing WW server system will have some negative impacts, world restructuring provides a regular redistribution of players that is critical to the long-term health and balance of the game mode. We're aiming to provide tools and options for you to create and maintain robust communities within the new structure. Yeah, that probably the main thing is communities in world versus world. I mean, it's servers and their guilds, and they're all like their guilds within guilds and all these connections and everything. It's literally what WW sometimes comes down to. So, but this honestly allows it in the more dynamic, open, free environment, because now you're gonna have guilds who, you know, like server restructuring or server transfers. This will be different because now they can play around with different communities at different timings. It's more dynamic than before. So I would like to see, you know, hopefully this is again another big point of this whole update, is this trying to create this way where people always find like a fresh map or a fresh matchup with players. Queues are bad, and we hear you. This is a major issue for some teams. During this first week, this was heavily impacted by a population surge from the WVW Rush event. Even in later weeks, we could see some significant queue times on certain teams. We are looking into ways to reduce queue pressure in prime time slots while protecting balance in lower population times. Many players have also pointed out that long queues led to an increase in AFK players, a vicious cycle. We are investigating better ways to clear inactive players from the maps to reduce this inflated pressure on queues. Of course, both of these issues were also made worse and more frustrating by the map is full errors we discussed earlier. And again, still investigation top priority. Fun facts. I like some statistics. During the world restructuring beta, I was paying special attention to the commanders, and I saw a lot of extra people tagging up. There are 6,236 unique commanders. Commanders were tagged for an average of 4.7 hours during the beta. Average weekly commanding hours increased by approximately 26% during the beta. Earlier this year, an issue caused us to disable gliding DevDub for a period, which ended up being sort of an impromptu rules change test. Many of our players certainly felt the impact, as you'll see below. 35,000 people, 546 players died of fall damage while gliding was disabled. This averaged 5,359 falling deaths per day, a 94% increase over the normal daily average.
Noobs.
Yeah. You tell them, bro. Yeah. Imagine dying to fall damage, guys. Come on now. What are we in 2016? The future. With this beta wrapped up and lots of work yet to come, we still want to talk about our future plans. Better information in more places. This is a system with lots of moving parts, data, deadlines, and player input. In an effort to make that information more accessible and apparent, we're planning several UI and API improvements. We don't have a definite timeline on these yet, but we will share them as we have. UI, adding the next team creation and next lockout deadline to guild WVW panel. Adding guild roster indicators for players who have chosen the currently viewed guild as their WVW guild. Oh, this is big. I'd love to know like who's actually in the guild, who's selected and will be playing with us. That's big. That's really good for team roster. Making the WVW team selection panel information visible but inactive when you have an assigned team. So allowing players to see what teams their contacts and guilds are on. Oh, amazing. That is amazing. Yes, that's a big plus. API. Adding next team creation times for each region, adding next lockout deadline, adding WVW guilds assigned team, and adding WVW guilds next team. So it's basically this added to the API. Similar to our world linking forum post, this would allow guilds to know what team they will be assigned at reset as soon as the team creation data reaches the server. Adding an API key option for players selected WVW guild and another key for a player's assigned team. And that's not all. That's not all, guys, because this is the big news here. Here's the big one.
Yeah.
6th guild slot, Kiba. Were you satisfied with not 1, 2, or 3, or 4, or 5 slots? Now you got 6 slots, bro. Insane. Many players were frustrated by the feeling of losing a guild slot to properly organize in the world restructuring system. We also want to encourage players to build long-lasting and meaningful communities in our game, and this made that more difficult. To remedy that, we have decided to add a 6th guild slot when world restructuring is turned on full time. This guild slot will have all normal guild functions and will be available to all players regardless of their world versus world participation. 6th slot incoming. Let's go. This is actually huge. This is the biggest thing they've ever done right now. This was unexpected. I didn't think they'd even add a 6th slot to begin with. Didn't even think they would even address WVW, to be honest with you. Yeah. All right. Region transfers. During the beta, we got a few questions about the future of world and region transfers with the removal of home worlds. We wanted to let you know that region transfer functionality will still be available via an updated character selection interface. In addition, we'll be setting the gem cost to transfer regions to a flat 500 gems, as we no longer need to have variable costs based on world population. This is actually a huge one as well. Not because of the variable, but because of the fact that people were still confused whether or not they were going to add gems to this, or were they going to keep it free, or how was it going to go? Because the original plan was the worlds just reshuffle themselves, and so you didn't need to actually pay for anything. As long as you selected your team, you're going to be on that team. But 500 gems, this is a good balance for players who want to transfer in the middle of a matchup. So it's going to be as easy as 500 gems. That's going to be an average of 100-ish gold. So not too bad. Next, beta. While the beta was mostly a major success for the team, we are concerned about the new version of the queue issue we've discovered, particularly the evidence that world restructuring is worsening it. The map is full error being an extremely negative player experience. We aren't comfortable enabling the system full time before we resolve it. Investigating this issue is the #1 priority for the world restructuring team. We don't have a timeline to solve it right now. We will share more information on this issue when we can. Once we find a solution for the queue, we'll have a clear picture of what is the next step for turning world restructuring on full time. Ideally, the next time we turn on world restructuring, it will stay on. So they're actually done with betas. They've done all the research, they've done all the data, they've checked the facts, they've checked the analytics. They're actually done. The next time it's on, it's happening, Kibo. WVW alliances coming to you in 2024. No longer when. It's actually this
2024?
Year. Yeah.
No, it's not.
I believe.
It's gonna happen, but not this year.
I'm going to close this up.
There's no timeline.
There is a timeline. The timeline is the next time they turn it on, it will stay on. That is your timeline.
Okay, well, I'm going to wait till you read the final bullet point.
Thanks for participating. Your involvement in our World Restructuring Beta events has given us the ability to test and tune the system to support the future of World vs. World. We've got lots of exciting stuff coming and lots of hard work ahead. But we couldn't have gotten here without your participation and support. So for now, I'll leave you with a quick reminder of our current priorities. The future goals section below specifically references things we know we want to do but could be deprioritized or significantly delayed as the other important issues come up. So top priority, next World Restructuring map is full error investigation, adding the next lockout deadline timer to the in-game UI, adding the 6th guild slot. The future goals, no timeline, is the API integrations for WVW and World Restructuring information, adding the additional guild and World vs. World interface improvements, better mixed language team experience, and improved detection of inactive players. The TLDR, that's it, gamers. 6th slot, Alliances 2024, I believe. There you have it. That is your World Restructuring beta feedback and future. This is actually a big surprise. I did not expect it, but let me know what you guys think. Is Alliances happening in this year? Let me know.